All right, so you want to talk dividends. Let's dive in. Specifically, how do those dividends hold up when the market feels like one of those carnival rides that just won't stop spinning?
And let me tell you, figuring out how dividends act when the market throws a curveball, well, that's some valuable knowledge right there.
For this deep dive, I went deep into the data. You know I love that stuff. We're talking S&P 500 numbers going way back, plus some really interesting chatter about those investing strategies that you don't always hear about, the ones that make you think.
Sounds like a plan. Let's get into it.
Okay, so picture this. The S&P 500, we dug through its history, going all the way back to World War II, and guess what? Dividends have weathered every single recession since then. Now, here's the thing that really surprised me. The average drop in dividends during these recessions?
It's small, surprisingly small. We're
Yeah.
talking a measly 2% for the S&P 500. And, when you compare that to how much share prices plummet in the same time, it really makes you wonder, where's the real stability here?
Okay, so let's break that down. What does a 2% dividend reduction actually mean for someone? Say they've got $10,000 invested.
Let's say you're getting a 4% yearly dividend on that 10 grand. That's $400, right? Now with this 2% drop, you're looking at, let's see, about $392. So yeah, it's a dip, but it's not like watching your portfolio go down the drain.
Right, it's like having a little cushion when things get bumpy.
Yeah.
But what's the secret sauce here? What's making these dividends so resilient? Is it just like a numbers game, or is there something more to it?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting because it speaks to the whole corporate culture we have here in the U.S., particularly those big companies listed on the S&P 500. For them, maintaining or even growing those dividends, it's a badge of honor, a way of showing their investors that they're reliable, stable.
We're not going anywhere.
Exactly. And there's a perfect example of this from your research. Remember the 2008 financial crisis?
Who could forget, right?
Even in the middle of that chaos, the 23% dividend cut we saw, a lot of it came down to the government pressuring those bailed out banks.
Yeah.
It wasn't always a true reflection of their actual performance.
So it was more of a strategic play than a sign of the market tanking.
Exactly. There were even banks like Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase. They were doing okay, remained profitable throughout the crisis, but that bailout came with strings attached. They were told to cut dividends.
Wow, that adds a whole other dimension to it. It's not that they couldn't afford to pay, it's that they were told to hold back.
Right. And it really highlights how important this consistent dividend payout is, even when things are rough.
It's like dividends are a kind of psychological safety net for investors during those market swings. Speaking of the human side of investing, remember that concept of hindsight investing we were looking at?
Oh, right, where it's easy to look back and say, I totally would have bought at the bottom, no problem. But when you're actually in it, fear and uncertainty everywhere, it's completely different.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020, right? Easy to be brave when you know the ending.
Exactly. And you have this great analogy in your research insurance.
Oh yeah, we buy insurance hoping we'll never have to use it, but it's reassuring to have, just in case.
Exactly. And that's kind of what dividend investing offers, a psychological safety net. You're not relying on selling shares into a falling market to fund your lifestyle or retirement. Those dividends, that steady income stream, they bring a sense of security, a bit of calm amidst the market storm.
It's like a financial umbrella when the markets start pouring. And, this whole idea of dividends giving you peace of mind during retirement, it made me think about another thing we were looking at, the one more year syndrome.
Ah, tell me more about this one more year thing. I'm curious.
So it's this thing, especially in the FIRE community.
Oh, and just so everyone's on the same page, remind us what that is.
Of course. FIRE, financial independence, retire early. It's people who are all about reaching financial independence so they can retire early. Exactly what it sounds like.
Got it. Makes sense. So back to this one more year thing.
Right. So many in the FIRE community, they've hit their financial targets, they've crunched the numbers, they could technically retire. But, and this is a thing, they hesitate. Sometimes for years.
What do you think causes that?
Well, a big part is the mental hurdle of actually spending from their portfolio. Seeing your investments grow on a screen is one thing, but actually tapping into that money, especially when the market's being unpredictable, whole other ballgame.
It's like they're scared of emptying that nest egg, right? All that hard work.
Exactly. But here's something interesting, Instant. Dividends can actually make that transition easier. They create a sort of psychological comfort. It's like saying, okay, I'm not touching the money I saved. I'm not chipping away at it, but I am still getting this income.
Yeah, it's changing how you think about it. From spending my savings to receiving income. That's got to be huge for someone who's been building a portfolio for years, right?
Yeah, like making that mental switch from saving for retirement to actually living in retirement, and dividends can help with that. Which reminds me, all this talk about building a retirement portfolio, it made me think about some of those criticisms of the buy the market strategy we talked about before. What are your thoughts on that, especially with something like the S&P 500?
You mean the whole VO and chill idea? It's definitely gotten popular.
Right. And while I get the appeal of that long-term diversified approach, some of the criticisms we saw really resonated with me.
Which one stood out to you?
This one really stuck with me, that focusing only on total returns through something like the S&P 500, it might make people forget about their own risk tolerance.
That's so important, and people forget about it all the time. Buy the market sounds good on paper, but it doesn't think about individual situations, goals, or how comfortable someone actually is with the market going up and down.
Like trying to fit everyone with the same size shoe, it just doesn't work.
Exactly. You wouldn't wear the same size shoe as everyone else, so why would your investment strategy be one size fits all? Your risk tolerance, your financial goals, those are personal.
And following the crowd blindly without understanding where you're going, why you're going there, that can lead to some nasty surprises,
Yeah.
financially and emotionally. And speaking of understanding our own financial journey,
There was something in your research about this too, about how certain investment philosophies are changing. Specifically, the booger head approach.
the booger heads. For anyone who's just tuning in, can you give us a quick rundown of what that's all about?
Sure thing. The booger head strategy is all about diversification, spreading investments across different sectors, different parts of the world to reduce risk. They don't like putting all their eggs in one basket.
Right, like making sure you have a balanced breakfast, a little bit of everything, but you're saying this approach might be changing.
Well, if you look at things now, there's definitely been a shift. That U.S. tech sector, with its crazy growth, it's got everyone's attention. It's like everyone's chasing those big returns, maybe forgetting about that wide diversification that boogerheads usually love.
So instead of spreading your bets, it's more like putting it all on one color, especially tech.
It's a trend to keep an eye on, that's for sure. I mean, it's hard to ignore how well U.S. tech has done lately. But it does make you wonder, are people maybe caught up in the excitement? Are they forgetting how important a truly diversified portfolio is for long-term stability?
It's easy to get lured in by what's shiny and new without thinking about the bigger picture, right?
That's the thing about market trends. They're like, oh, what's the saying? Here today, gone tomorrow.
Exactly.
And for most people, sticking with a diversified approach, that's what helps you ride those market waves, you know?
Makes sense. Well, we've covered a lot today, how resilient dividends can be during those market dips, the psychology of investing, even how popular strategies like the boogerhead approach are evolving. It really feels like it all comes back to making informed decisions, wouldn't you say?
Totally. It's easy to get swept up in the market hype, follow the crowd, chase those trends. But when it comes down to it, the people who do best with investing, they're the ones who take the time to understand what they want, their risk tolerance, and then they build a strategy that fits them.
It's like tuning out all the distractions and focusing on what really matters. Your financial well-being, your long-term goals.
Exactly. And remember, it's not a one-and-done thing. The markets are always changing, so our strategies have to change too. Stay informed, be flexible, and don't be afraid to ask questions, even challenge your own thinking.
That's so key. Investing isn't just watching from the sidelines. It's about being involved, learning, making decisions that work for you and your goal.
Couldn't said it better myself.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive for today. Huge thanks to you for bringing your expertise to this conversation. It's been fascinating.
Happy to be here.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of exploration. We hope this deep dive into dividend investing has given you the knowledge and insights you need to navigate the markets with confidence. Until next time, happy investing.